Members, we have a quorum, and it is the appointed time. Can we invite the administration to come in, please?
你今日係冇個 chairman's brief 俾我㗎嘛？唔好意思，我就係得。好，唔該晒。你班衰仔啊，我都唔嚟。我講我哋嗰啲。早晨。係各位同事
Members, yesterday we received deputations and individuals, and yesterday at the meeting we talked of a letter from the Hang Yi Cook, and that was for noting by members. The paper has yet to be given a serial number. This is what happened since the last meeting yesterday. Today, we will have the same team of officials assisting us in our scrutiny of the order. I don't think I need to introduce them because we have met them a few times. I'd like the officials to respond in detail what we raised at the first meeting and also to the submissions of the deputations and individuals. That's paper. Paper, bracket 1, 216/13 to 14, bracket 35. Mr. Au, please. Thank you, Chairman. At the first meeting, you requested, or members said that it would be best if we could use a PowerPoint to introduce the paper, so I'll defer to Mr. Sham. Okay, Mr. Sham. Thank you, Chairman and members. This is the Country Parks Designation Consolidation Amendment Order 2013. We'd like to incorporate country park enclaves of Tai Long, Sai Wan, Kam Shan, and Yuen Ton into country parks. We base that on certain criteria. First, the conservation value. 2, landscape and aesthetic value. And 3, recreation potential. And then we would also look at the size of the site, its proximity to existing country parks, the land status, and land use compatibility. The enclave that is the subject of discussion is the Tai Long Sai Wan enclave. Please look at the map. It is distributed like that. The bay there is Tai Long Sai Wan. You will see that there are two parts to this enclave, the north and the south parts. And in terms of figures, government land amounts to 12.53 hectares and private land 4.02 hectares. In this slide, we show you some photographs, a scenic beach. At present, there are not too many residents there, and the environment is very much compatible with the country park environment. It has a high scenic value, and since it is on MacLehose Trail, people who go there for hiking, camping, or natural appreciation love this place. The inclusion would protect Sai Wan from developments which are incompatible with the country park. If it becomes part of the country park, the Country and Marine Parks Authority would manage Sai Wan, including a patrol and law enforcement, collection of refuse, and vegetation management. We'll also set up information boards, warning signs, and we'll also designate camping facilities. As I was saying, the enclave is in 2 parts, totaling 16.55 hectares. The Sai Kung East Country Park, it's very beautiful and scenic, and this enclave blends in excellently with the country park, and actually they form an integral part of each other, and there are natural woodland and mangroves. This is another picture taken from the top of a mountain. That was the northern part, this is the southern part. In 2006, this place was ranked first amongst the 10 best scenic sites in Hong Kong. The recreation potential, as I mentioned, you could see the red line is the MacLehose Trail, and Sai Wan is at the bottom part of this picture. I think I covered this one. We would hope that it could remain compatible with the country park. And the next one, this is a map. This is the gazetted draft map. Let me also mention 2 other enclaves included in the order. The Kam Shan enclave. It is less than 1 hectare in area. It is near the peak of Kam Shan. It is only government land. The other one is Yuen Tan. It is at the south of the Tai Lam Country Park with an area of 20 hectares. The rest are maps. This is Yuen Tan. You see it is of a bigger area. The Civil Aid Service operates a camp there. That's my introduction, please. Thank you. Mr. Au, anything to add? Chairman, let me add a few points. To respond to questions raised at the first meeting, let me talk about why we have considered including Kam Shan. I think that has been covered by my colleague and I won't repeat him. As for the town planning ordinance and also the country park ordinance, I have already explained that basically if it is to be part of a country park, we would try to include it. The main difference is that there will be management, there will be patrol and law enforcement and other management facilities. There is a point not mentioned in the PowerPoint but at the last meeting, and that is whether there are other measures to promote the conservation of these enclaves. And actually, yes, in June 2011, we have obtained the support of the Environment and Conservation Fund Committee to extend the management agreements to cover the enclaves, and we have explained this scheme to different non-profit making organizations, Sai Kung District Council and local residents, and we are happy to help them make the applications. Thank you. Mr. Au, actually there are annexes which should be introduced by you, right? For example, Annex B, you have covered the issue of the development of small houses in the enclaves within country parks. And some speakers said yesterday that in the last decade, only 2 small houses have been allowed to be built. I think you have to respond. AFCD colleagues, please. Chairman, with regard to the building of small houses in country parks, yesterday some speakers said that in the past decade only 2 NT-exempted houses were approved to be built within country parks. This is correct information, mainly because in the last 10 years the Country and Marine Parks Authority only received 2 applications, And after consulting the authority, we did not raise any objections, so we approved those 2 cases. This is because there were only 2 applications and both were approved. This is by way of information, please. Secondly, if an enclave is included in a CP, as we said clearly in previous meetings, that first, when private land is included into a CP, it does not revert the land back to the government. Secondly, the permitted uses on the land will still be permitted. It is just that when private land is included in a CP, if development should take place, the owner has to apply to the authority first. Generally speaking, in what circumstances would we consider the application and how do we do the vetting? We have always had a way to deal with this, and this is put down in the so-called notes. In Annex B of the paper, we have included that note. Mainly, it says that normally we would consider whether the development, say for example, if it is a small house or a small project, whether it would affect the overall conservation, the landscape, and the naturalness of the CP, whether that would be affected. That is the basic principle. And then we will do some vetting and assessment to see whether indeed some effects would come about. To certain villages, this may be a little vague. So we have done our best to write down the factors that we would consider. This is in para 5.2 of Annex B, paras A to E, and I will take you through them briefly. First, if it is in the village environ and they should avoid areas of difficult terrain, this is because of safety considerations. And they should consider the ecology, whether streams would be affected, and are there ecological sensitive areas? These should be avoided as far as possible.
Now, if it involves cutting of trees, then of course we try to avoid that, especially protected trees or very old trees. If it cannot be avoided, we try to have trees planted in compensation. And we also look at the impact on biodiversity, whether damage would be caused, and also the cumulative impact. Now, as for existing sightseeing or hiking facilities, how they would be affected, that would be taken into account as well. And we also look at the works and the location to see whether they are suitable, and we let the villagers know our views. We try to find ways by relocation or compensatory measures, and we also understand that the villagers may need to develop village houses for their own habitation within the village area, and we try to help them as much as possible. In keeping with as long as it's in keeping with the goal of conservation. So all this is online. Anyone can have access to this very transparent information. We hope to alleviate the concerns of the villagers through these measures. Now, on Annex C, there is a compensation mechanism. Mr. Ao, please. Now, under Country Parks Ordinance, there is a compensation mechanism, and this is listed in detail in Annex C. Now, under Section 16 of CPO, if the authority feels that the occupier feels that the use of the land would reduce the use of the land as part of country park, he may ask for the works to be ceased. Now he can, the villager concerned can appeal to the CE. Now, if the lease provides for certain rights to the owner, and if he is affected, then he can apply to under Section 19 for compensation regarding this modification of use. Thank you, Mr. Ao. Now, just now we have distributed to members the latest letter from the Heung Cook New Territories. Now, last night this was faxed to our public relations office, and the subcommittee received it only this morning. So there is no document number, and I took a glance at it, and there is a proposal for amendment for the subcommittee, and here I must make clear that the it's a duty or right to propose amendments, but this right is only for LegCo, and of course the executive branch can also propose an amendment. Now this is a suggestion from the Heung Cook. And now questions for officials. Mr. Tian first. Mr. James Tian. Now, I don't own any land there, but I go there frequently because I often go with my grandson on a boat launch to Talong Sai Wan. It's a beautiful beach, and there are a few houses, maybe village houses, and they sell some soft drinks to us. And then some people come, they walked 1 or 2 hours. So I don't understand why there would be value for construction of a villa-type building, because it costs a lot to travel by boat. And this document talks about compensation. Now, these enclaves, 不包括土地. Now, now this has to do with green belt or country park. What's the distinction now? And it's not government land, it's private land, and it becomes part of country park. Now, this does not respect their way of life, and also the system of private property rights. They are so angry. Now, they can't build a luxury house there. Now, on the distinction, as explained earlier, Taiwan, you can see from the pictures, it has high scenic and recreation potential. And once it's in a country park, there's a big difference in management. Now, right now, some government lands are not taken care of. Now, once it's in a country park, the AFCD will invest in manpower and financial resources to grow grass and send patrols there, and this raises the scenic and recreational value. And also with the country park management, subject to the agreement or consent of AFCD. Now, this mechanism, as you can see from the pictures, is mainly agricultural land there. Now, for agricultural land, agricultural lots under existing village, within existing village environs, now an application has to be made for works to the lands department, and it also has to be approved by the AFCD. Now, the distinction is not that big. Now, certainly you have to notify the AFCD, and after the lands department receives the application, it has also to consult the AFCD and get the approval of AFCD. And the incorporation into country park doesn't mean the land will be taken away. The property rights is not affected. In other words, it still belongs to the villager. The villager can continue to apply to build small houses. Now, I'm asking for the distinction. Firstly is the management, and secondly, the AFCD has to formally agree. How about financially? For small houses, no distinction. Mr. Ao, maybe you can tell us whether there are more restrictions on development. Now, there are two categories for small houses. As I said repeatedly, the authority approval and country park, these two, there are no contradictions, complementary. Now, within country parks, there are 450 hectares of private land, and there are small houses. Now, the authority, of course, will keep a close watch, and the country park principles have to be complied with. Now, we cannot avoid the issue. You have to state clearly once the land is incorporated into country park, if one has to build a large structure, then there would be more considerations. Now, are there provisions that prohibit that? Now, Mr. Ao says it doesn't make much distinction for small houses, but how about other than small houses? Now, if there are other developments that affect the recreational value of a country park, then the authority may or may not approve. Now, if you are talking about major development like hotels, luxury housing, the government may ask them to pay premium. And are you saying that they can't even pay premium? If it's a large-scale development that affects the country park use, then the authority will not entertain that. Mr. Low Wai Kwok? Now, I think conceptually we must be clear. Just now I heard that the incorporation of Saiwan into country park. Now, the bay is already in country park. It's in Sai Kung East Country Park. This is enclave, historically speaking. The blue line indicates the village environs. So an important issue is we have to conserve within the Sai Kung East Country Park, especially within the beautiful Saiwan area. At the same time, we have to consider the historical factors and private property rights. Now, in particular, the enclaves consist of the Saiwan village. So the question is whether Saiwan village is to be incorporated into Country Park. It's not Saiwan incorporation into Country Park. Now, in the first meeting and also yesterday after the hearing, now all the questions asked, many of them try to explain why Saiwan is incorporated into Country Park. Now, it should be Saiwan enclaves, not according to Town Planning Ordinance, that is OZP. Now, yesterday, the village representatives give me the impression that they used to rely on the OZP approach to regulate which is village land and which is greenbelt. Now, that's easier for me to accept, even though Mr. Ao said many times that the authority feels this is the better approach. But you have to consider the villagers' views. Is it that the villagers want you to clear the rubbish for them and to cut the grass for them? Now, please explain. Why is it that the OZP, which has been working well regularly, is not workable here? Mr. Ao, let me try to supplement now, and I will ask the AFCD to talk about the difference in management. Now, after consulting the criteria, regarding CMW now here are the criteria. First, whether the land is suitable for Country Park. As we can see from the map and pictures, the two circles, they are surrounded by Country Park, so the visitors go through them. They are of high recreational value and they are part of Country Park. So therefore, the authority feels that it should be incorporated in Country Park. Now, what's the difference from OZP approach? Now, the Country Park approach is to try to promote the use of the land as Country Park so that more visitors can enjoy them. Now, if it's under OZP, it's we're talking about the various uses under OZP. Now, the land is all surrounded by Country Park, so it's more suitable for inclusion into Country Park. And also, the AFCD plays the main monitoring role to ensure that it stays as a good part of Country Park. Now, at the AFCD, please. Now, on the management of Country Park, in the past, we have had experience of over 30 years. Now, if we incorporate a piece of land into Country Park, we take proactive measures to protect and conserve the place. And also, if there are parts therein which require improvement in our view, for instance, amenities for tourists or visitors, hiking trails at hiking trails. For instance, the biking trails, we try to improve them through these proactive measures.
So we can conserve the place even better. On the other hand, we like to allow more people to use even better recreational facilities. Number 3, in the past, private land had been included in CPs. We also make use of such active management measures to do conservation and management. For example, the Talong Saiwan Enclave, if it is included in the CP, we will take measures to enable these two enclaves to be even more compatible with the overall environment and the landscape of Sai Kung East Country Park. As our colleague said, this is on MacLehose Trail. Now, how can we make use of these enclaves to facilitate hiking and camping facilities? We of course understand that some villages still live there. Now, how can we talk to villagers so that we can help them improve the environment and their livelihood? The department, together with the Sai Kung DO, will work together to help improve the environment in the rural areas. This is what we do after enclaves are included in CPs. And then we can do it by way of planning. Again, this is for protecting the enclaves. But then, by way of planning, it means there will be no dedicated department to do active management or active conservation as I detailed. But country parks are under the jurisdiction of AFCD. In other words, there is a dedicated department to do dedicated work. That's the difference. We talked about having two possible approaches. But in fact, we assess the enclaves individually. Saiwan is unique because it is an integral part of the CP. Its aesthetics and landscape and its recreation use. You know, if you don't point it out, nobody would think that it is not part of the CP now. And therefore, after its inclusion, we would plow in resources to do active management and conservation to make the place more available to members of the public. And secondly, we can do sustainable conservation there through active management. Okay, please do not repeat yourself. Members, of course, you are aware that I have been lenient with the officials in terms of the time given to them to speak, and I think they were not beating about the bush and they were still providing information. So I gave them some more time. Before I give the floor to Mr. Lau Wang Fat, another member is attending the meeting for the first time, so I would remind him to declare interest. Mr. Lau Wang Fat? Sorry, he was off mic. Thank you, Chairman, members. Well, I have to conduct the meeting according to the procedures. I have to declare interest. I have bits and pieces of land, quite a bit of them, within the new territories. Country parks are always being extended. Maybe today I don't have interest to declare, but maybe later on, if the country parks become even bigger, I might have land involved. So this is to protect myself, and I would like to make this advance declaration. Now I understand that the Hung Yi Cook has written and has in fact just written in again, and I'd like to add to that. There are articles in the basic law of the SAR to protect private property, and the SARG has constitutional obligation to implement the basic law. Hong Kong is a society with the rule of law. Even the government has to abide by the law so that there would not be excessive powers enjoyed by the government, and so that the people's interests would not be encroached upon. What is unfortunate is that the Country Parks Designation or Consolidation Amendment Order 2013 does not comply with the spirit of the basic law. I must say that actually the owners of the land do not absolutely object to the inclusion, but they just are unhappy with the way this is being dealt with, that you are riding roughshod over the people without giving any compensation. The draft plan of the Sai Kung East Country Park will be amended. The Hang Yi Kok, Sai Kung District Council, Sai Kung Rural Committee, etc., they have all expressed objection, and 2 residents in Saiwan have already lodged a JR case, and it has been given leave by the court. However, the government still overlooks the interests of the relevant residents. I believe this is not the right attitude for the government. According to the latest declaration, it points out that Saiwan village will be included in the Sai Kung East CP, but that represents some disrespect for history, the rightful rights of owners, and interests of owners. And it goes back on its own words because it gave the promise that private land would not be included into CPs. This is very unjust for the owners of the land there. And this will pose a very bad precedent. There will be a very deep impact on the harmony in society. Therefore, we hope that the subcommittee would propose to the Council to repeal the Country Parks Designation Consolidation Amendment Order 2013. I would like to move a motion, and I seek members' support, and that is to repeal the CPSKEA plan deposited at the land registry and which was approved by the Governor in Council on the 17th of January 1978 and replace it by the CPSKEB plan approved by the CE in Council on the 7th of May 2013 and which is deposited with the land registry. I'd like to move that motion. Please support the motion so we can find a solution to the problem. Mr. Lau, I was asking the legal advisor and the clerk. The declaration of interest you made was unclear. The simplest way to do it is that actually we can ask you whether you confirm that according to the public register you have filled out at Legislative Council, including land ownership, etc., and whether it has anything to do with the 2 enclaves. We have to confirm that first before you can move the motion. Okay. I think I don't have land at Ta Long Saiwan, but maybe some at Tuen Fu Cai. What about these 2 enclaves? But later on, if you further extend the country park and it would cover my land, then would that be a problem? I have declared it for the public's inspection, not in Ta Long Saiwan. In fact, we do not know exactly which place Mr. Lau Wong Fat is talking about. Are you sure it is not in Ta Long Saiwan? Mr. Lau, please confirm whether you have any land ownership rights with regard to these 2 enclaves. No. Okay. Then we can complete the declaration of interest procedure. And Mr. Lau Wong Fat is moving a motion to amend the order. We need a seconder. So Mr. Lau, do you need a seconder? Sorry, I am asking questions now. Members, just now, the Hang Yi Kok letter has been circulated to you, and Mr. Lau Wong Fat has also submitted a motion, and it has been copied to members. Let me first ask you whether anyone would second the motion. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, Chairman. Chairman, I think you have to explain something. if this paragraph is deleted and if there are no other amendments, does it mean that Kem Shan and Yuen Tan are not objected to, that those two would be included in CPs? But the actual effect of this motion is that temporarily the two enclaves in Saiwan would not be included in the CP for now. Is that right? We do not object to including government land in CP. We think that is reasonable. But if it is private land, it has always been an enclave. This was what was said in 1978, that private land would not be included. Okay, Mr. Lau has explained the contents of the amendment. Mr. Low Wai Kok, would you like to second him? Yes. That is exactly what I thought the effect of the amendment would be. Any views, any comments, members? Mr. Kenneth Chan and then Mr. James Tian. If you are making a comment, only 4 minutes. Are you discussing the motion or are you following the meeting procedure? Yes, exactly. I was coming to that. I was saying that I would like to apologize. I was saying that 2 other members had raised their hands to ask questions before the motion was moved. Mr. Albert Chen and then Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Chairman, I like the administration to assist us. Number 1, the amendment has been a subject of controversy. I looked at the maps when the CP was planned. Many small sites were not included within the boundary of the CP. Why was that? What was the rationale then? Because this is quite strange. In a country park, there are these plots of land which are not included. Of course, very often they may be private land and they may be inhabited. I'd like you to explain the historical background and all the reasons why you did not include those plots of land. I hope you can write us a paper and explain why each enclave has been left out. Let us know the rationale and the causes. I'm sure you have papers on that. Secondly, once the enclaves are included within CPs, now I have not compared all the plans of CPs vis-à-vis column 1, column 2 uses. At present, within the boundary of CP or quite close to CP, if there are villages, indigenous villages still have their houses on village zones, and within the village boundary, there will be column 1, column 2 requirements under the TPO. But those 2 uses are quite different from column 1, column 2 uses under the CPO. Now I need some information with regard to the planning for CPs in Hong Kong. Is it that column 1 and column 2 are totally the same for country parks? Is there any difference? Are there planning restrictions with regard to column 1, column 2 uses? Are they exactly the same or is there any difference? I think that is important to me.
If they are all identical, then under existing planning, if this is approved, then are all the column 1 and column 2 the same, or there is no column 2, or what? And why can't there be column 2? Because with column 2, then in the future you have greater flexibility in handling problems. I'll answer about the second question, and then on the first question the AFCD can supplement. Now the second question by Mr. Chen. Now if it stays in country park, there wouldn't be OZP, and there would be column 1 and column 2 issue. Column and columns 1 and 2 only apply to OZP. And on historical background, will the AFCD supplement, please? Let me address that. Now, the country parks ordinance, now the first batch of country parks, That was in 1978-79. So they were established then. In the process, the government consulted the relevant departments and the residents, and in the new territories there was work done through the new territories administration back then. And as I understand it, in the course of establishment of this batch of country parks, some 460 hectares of private land were incorporated. And when these country parks were gazetted, we consulted through the district officers whether there were objections, and then there would be consultation if there were objections. Now, right now, there are 77 enclaves in country parks, so that's basically the background. Mr. Wu-Chi-Wai, can there be information supplied after the meeting? Because every location may be different. We have to look in detail when we scrutinize these maps. Can we have the reasoning behind each site? Mr. Chen, now the order covers these three sites only, and as for the others, can the government provide us with the document? Actually, it should go to development panel. Just these three sites, please. Yes. Mr. Wu-Chi-Wai. Thank you. Now, it has been very clear since yesterday's discussion. The OZP involves the agricultural lots within these areas. They can apply for change of use to become to be developed as village type development. If now, so it can and it can only residential land can be used for residential development in other cases. So areas zoned as V doesn't mean that all the land within the village can be used for building houses. There are still other restrictions. Now, please confirm that. Secondly, on this piece of land, now, which consists of agricultural lots and housing lots. Now, can you tell us about the distribution and how about whether this land, to what extent are these lots being decrepit or neglected? Now, that's most of these villages are now decrepit or neglected, and people are talking about future development potential. So is this what we are talking about when we talk about protection of the rights of indigenous villages? They have given up the rights. They are not living there now. So should the government demarcate a piece of land for this long-term or permanent development? Now, on the V zoning, under OZP, there would be different zoning land uses. One is the V zone, village type development. Now, within the V zone, how are column 1 and column 2 designated? If it's column 1, it's permanently approved. No application is required for building. For column 2, application is required. Now, the restriction depends on the stipulation by the OZP. Now, if it's incorporated into country park, then there wouldn't be any distinction in zoning. It's all country park. And according to the CPO, according to each application, it would be considered individually. If it's for small houses, it would be considered on the criteria stated. Now, if it's agricultural lot within country park, in principle, agricultural lot is agricultural. One cannot apply or naturally to turn it into housing lot unless the authorities' approval is obtained. And so you try to balance in this way the interests of the villagers and the country park so that you don't have a large-scale development of the village. Now, for agricultural lots, as shown by the dotted lines, now this recognized villages. Now that continues to exist. If it's agricultural lot, lands registry approval has to be obtained for building a small house, and that's same for future. Now the AFCD can explain over 90% is agricultural lots, roughly, and I like to supplement. Right now, the two blue the lines, two areas encircled by dotted lines, the village environs. So right now they can apply for construction of small house, and these channels continue to exist. Once they are incorporated into country park, then they have to apply to AFCD or to the authority for approval, and so they have to make an additional application. So the yellow part is the agricultural lot. Now, whether it's country park or not, it's agricultural land. Then the village environs is within the blue dotted lines. And how about the area between the blue dotted lines and the black line? What land is that? The white part, sorry. The blue based, now there are dotted blue lines and black lines. Now you say village environs within the blue dotted lines, and the white part is government land, the yellow part is agricultural lot. That's a yellow, and the pink part is the private residential land. So only the area within the blue lines are private land affected. The two areas within dotted blue lines are the recognized village environs, and under existing policy within recognized village environs, one can apply for building small house, and according to existing policy and guidelines, they will be approved in that manner. So that will continue once it's incorporated into country park. The white land is government land. The yellow is private agricultural land. So for the yellow agricultural land, the ownership belongs to the villagers. The white land belongs to the government. Yes. Next, Dr. Chen Ka-Lok. Now, well, one has to talk about, consider the law, especially the basic law, whether the private property rights are threatened. Now, the government has tried to explain that there is no threat. The order includes the enclaves in country parks. Doesn't mean that the government has taken the land. So the public has some concern, and the government says there's no need for concern. The government has given additional resources for conservation, and one may even deploy the resources of the Environment and Conservation Fund for conservation and development within country parks for users of country park. Now, if I am an indigenous villager, and if I would like to do something, and the CE has already signed the order, and what can be done or should be done through the fund or otherwise to help them under existing policies that can help conservation of the country parks, including the existing enclaves, and at the same time which will benefit those indigenous villagers who want to resume cultivation or to want to build houses. How will you help them in the long run? Now let me try to explain. Now the Conservation Fund already incorporates the enclaves. Now one can refer to the case of Long Yun. The non-profit organizations and the house owners and the farmers cooperate, and the government provides financial assistance for them to grow rice and implement conservation, and houses are rented, and the local farmers are invited to participate. It has been quite welcome to local farmers, and that also applies to Deep Bay, and so there are 3 plans afoot, similar plans, so cooperation between the parties concerned, and so this can also apply to Taiwan. One can have ecological travel, guided tours, the local venues or places can be rented, and the local people can be employed, and the AFCD will inject resources for this cooperation. Maybe the AFCD can supplement. Mr. Leung? Now, firstly, we have to talk to local villagers on what activities they desire us to introduce to improve the environment or improve their life. In our thinking, say for Taiwan, as we said, there are many hikers. They pass by or through, and there can be campsites which can attract more visitors. Provided the villagers agree, then they can engage in such a small business, and the villagers will benefit. And also, in terms of refuse collection or vegetation management, some removal of weeds, the villagers can participate, and we can employ them.
This is something we can consider. On the other hand, the application for building small houses, if they are built for their own use within village environs, as I said, yes, they have to apply, and there may be some hurdles, but we can help them achieve the purpose of building the small house, and at the same time we can protect the environment from damage. If the enclaves are included in CPs, this is what we can do. Mr. James Yan? I raised my hand just now in order to ask questions on the motion moved by Mr. Lau Wang-Fat, so I have nothing further to say. Okay, I will leave 15 minutes for processing the motion. Do you think it's enough? If you have questions for the mover, we can leave that till the last 15 minutes. This meeting will end at 10:45, and I'll take up the motion at 10:30. You agree? Do you need more time? Okay, I'll process the motion at 10:30. Mr. Lau Wong-Fat. Chairman, I'd like to respond to the official. Well, he pictured it as if it would be so good so they could take care of the residents. Well, that is what he is saying, but it is not going to be actually done. If it were really like what the official said, we would not have the problems we have today. I hope the LegCo can ask the government to go back to 1979 when the CPO was enacted. Let us look at the background to the making of the CPO. It was also for taking better care of the villagers and to make their livelihood better, and also if there were hikers or campers, then people would be able to buy soft drinks, and the villagers could accommodate them. But then it was said that they operated a hostel without a license, and also they did not have a hawker license if they sold soft drinks. Originally, that was what was in the papers, but then, law enforcement-wise, the villagers were not allowed to undertake those activities. So let us look at the discussion process of the 1979 CPO. It was said that villagers would be given services and would be given assistance, etc. But now, nothing of that sort has transpired. Let us look at history. Villagers are very concerned about this order. Now, at that time, the economy in Europe was sluggish, and the Hong Kong government was building reservoirs, and catch waters took the water to the reservoirs. So their livelihood was affected. But then villagers were very smart. They did not have passports, so they could not go to Europe. But then they applied. Eventually, they got passports, and all of them went to the UK. But then the economy of Europe suffered, and they came back. But then they could not start to practice agriculture. There was nothing they could do. I took part in meetings in 1979, and Akers Jones was very supportive. So we did not object to the CPO because enclaves would not be included. We did not say anything about government land, but private property was the subject of discussion. And at the Legislative Council, then there was a motion for the government to set up a fund, and a certain percentage of the land sale proceeds in the new territories should be put into the fund. And if enclaves are included into country parks, then they could be compensated if they were happy to give up their land either by sale or by land exchange. But the government refused to do it. And that is why the people now are rising up in protest. As you know, new territories people are very obedient. In 1979, we had these meetings. I think the government now should supply those papers for reference because the government gave undertakings then. Thank you, Mr. Lau Wong-Fat, for your oral history, so we know more background. Mr. Au, would you like to add? I'd like to tackle the package of measures for enclaves included in CPs. Actually, the authority and the AFCD are taking very good care of the villages. There is very good cooperation. In 2010, you know, there was the Saiwan incident, and there was a huge concern in the community. That is why in the ensuing policy address, the CE said that enclaves would be regulated. Mr. Lau Wong-Fat, any follow-up? Well, we still object to the inclusion of the enclaves. At that time, when the CPO was enacted, they were excluded from CPs, but now they are good to be included, so I object. Mr. Loh Wai Kwok. Chairman, of course there are historic causes. If Saiwan would be included in the CP, and if there were so many advantages, then villagers would have supported it, and there would not be these enclaves, and the entire map would be in green. Therefore, I think we have to respect history, and we should look at the causes of the original exclusion so that we know why the villagers, Sai Kung District Council, and Hang Yi Kok are in such fierce opposition. Just now, the director of AFCD gave us the impression that it should be better to use OZP for detailed planning. There is also government land. If you say you want to turn it into camping sites, then do it by planning. Even for the private land between the between the blue and black lines, the government can cooperate with the villagers and do something. So all in all, I still feel that our officials have a one-track mind, and they will just go for the so-called best solution in their eyes, and that is to include them in country parks. I have been on the town planning board for a few years. My experience tells me that detailed planning is good for future land management. Of course, I won't disagree that the AFCD has an important role to play in this. I also like to explain that I would second the motion moved by Mr. Lau Wong Fat. It is not that by repealing this order we'll not be able to do anything about the enclaves again, but I would actually say that the other two enclaves which are not controversial should be supported, but then this one proved to be very controversial, and we have been asking the question of why you don't use the OZP approach, and we still haven't got a satisfactory answer. Now, if we don't include it in this order, we can still work on it. I think we should work for a win-win solution for all. And Chairman, I am worried that the officials are saying if we object to including Saiwan into a CP, we would become sinners. Now, I said at the beginning that conceptually we should be clear. We are not talking about Saiwan as such, but only Saiwan village and the enclaves. Those are the controversial plots. Mr. Kenneth Chan, I will read out the members who are waiting to speak. Kenneth Chan, Wu Chi-wai, Albert Chan, and James Tian. Mr. Kenneth Chan. Please be brief. We'll have to process the motion at 10:30. And Ms. Elizabeth Quat should speak for the first round. So Ms. Elizabeth Quat first. I'd like to reiterate that the Sai Kung District Council, after many discussions, put forward many views. And the SKDC said very clearly that it objected to the inclusion of enclaves into the Sai Kung East Country Park. If you read the discussion papers of the Sai Kung District Council, it shows that there has been a long-term discussion with the government. You said that you maintained a good relationship with the villagers to listen to them. But according to Sai Kung District councillors and villagers, they are of the opinion that the administration has not listened to villagers, and you do not respect history, and you don't know the needs of the villagers. We all know that this is a very scenic area, but villagers living just have made no negative impact on the landscape of the area. However, there is a lack of transport and public facilities infrastructure. For example, government land is surrounded by wire meshes and is an eyesore. You say that you support villagers if they want to conduct small businesses, but then when they applied for licenses, they were denied licenses. They were also asking for operating low-rise or small-scale hotels or motels. And as Mr. James Tian was saying, the place is not exactly accessible by land, and now even campers or hikers cannot stay overnight there. So it seems what villages are telling us and what you are telling us are not exactly the same. So villages are very concerned that if you further include these in CPs, there will be no possibility of development. We always say we should balance conservation and development. Is the inclusion proposal the only way and the best way to conserve this place? I have been to different countries, and whenever I do so, I try to see how people balance conservation and development. I'm back from Sri Lanka, and I have been to an environment hotel in a forest. That hotel has won many international awards. Originally, they said they would like to build a conservation hotel, but they were questioned by the residents. But now, after 10 years of development, it's proved that they can integrate with the environment. They also created a lot of job opportunities, and they injected impetus for development for the villages. They balanced development and conservation, and they did not destroy the environment at all. So why is it that when we talk about conservation, we can only go down one route? As Mr. Lo Wai Kwok was saying, you have this one-track mind to include everything in the CP, so you do not have to do planning. So you do not have to consider other things. Maybe there is another better way to do it, maybe by way of planning, so villages can preserve their way of life. There can be development and also conservation. Why don't we go for it? Is this the only solution? Have you given consideration to other approaches which will not disrespect their interests and their way of life, as the villagers are accusing you of? Mr. Au, I will give a brief reply. Before we started the statutory process, 1 year before that, we started to consult and contact villages and the rural committees. It was in June to August 2011. We took a proactive consultation approach. Did we listen to the villages? We did, Chairman. With regard to small house application, the authority has made a very important step by putting the notes on the web, and the notes were given to the task force. We attended all 4 task force meetings to explain matters. As for license applications, the AFCD and ourselves proactively helped coordinating with other departments. We like to have a win-win situation. We want villagers, holidaymakers, and also the community will all win. We hope that by including this in CP, we can achieve that even easier. Is this the only way? Saiwan is unique, and with the other factors, we believe this is the most appropriate and the best approach. Thank you. Let me talk about the timetable with you. We have time for 2 more meetings, so you don't have to rush and by thinking that this is the last meeting. In fact, after you have asked all the questions, the clause-by-clause examination will not take long. As you know, the clause-by-clause copy is very short. It is just about the plan numbers, whether you accept it or repeal it. That's very simple. So let me tell you a little about the timetable. The end of the scrutiny period would be the 4th of December. In other words, before the 4th of December, we can still have meetings, but the last day for giving notice to move amendments will be the 27th of November. And on the 22nd of November, we will have to report to the House. We did something before, and that is even after a report was made to the HC, members could still move amendments as long as this is before the deadline. And in fact, we have already blocked our diary for another meeting next Tuesday on the 12th of November from 9 o'clock to 10:45. So this is not the last meeting, and members do not have to rush. At 10:30, we need to process Mr. Lau Wong Fat's motion, and I have to draw a line there. There are 4 members who like to speak again: Kenneth Chan, Wu Chi Wai, Albert Chan, and James Tian. because of time constraint, only 3 minutes each. At 10:30, we have to process the motion by Mr. Lau Wong-Fat.
我就再減咯。
Mr. Long Hawk, you are going to ask a question? Okay, 1 minute. The other members, 3 minutes, please. That includes replies by officials. Kenneth Chen. I try to be as succinct as possible. Thank you for reminding us there is still time for more meetings. Now, the discussion this morning, we haven't referred to Lo Lin Sheng. This is an incident a couple of few years ago that was in a way a scandal for conservation. Now, why was there such a heated debate? Now, we have been very careful in our discussion because we don't want what happened then. Mr. Lau Wong-Fat is very concerned that very little can be, nothing can be done, and no business can be operated. And Mr. Tian travels by boat a long way, and you might have a heliport, and so it's very difficult access. So this is all part of the history, and the Civic Party line is very simple. As long as private property rights are not affected, we can talk about many alternatives. The government has talked about how to provide assistance to the residents. We've talked about home-style accommodation, soft drink kiosks. Now, the government says it has reserved hundreds of hectares for such development. Now, of course, the area of small houses is a big area for discussion. But looking at this current application, we have to deal with the Lo Lin Sheng issue. Now, if we don't use the Country Parks Ordinance, given the legal tools available for us to monitor the area, we have to take care of private property rights, the rights of indigenous villagers, and also the future development potential, conservation, resume cultivation, home-style accommodation for hikers. Now, I think if you can offer all those to the public, we think there is no big difficulty concern. So in principle, we support the amendment. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Now, we have been talking about striking a balance, conservation and development. Now, in my view, the country park and the OZP approaches are different in two ways mainly. Now, one who is the main decision maker, of course, the AFCD, in regulating the country parks, it would put greater weight on conservation, and that is in line with the public's aspirations. And secondly, when we talk about OZP approach, we are talking about the village style, V-zone, OZP, column 1, column 2 developments. Now, for those, to what extent do they depart from the villagers' interests? That is, indigenous villagers can build homes for themselves. To what extent are we departing from that basis? And Mr. Lau Wong-Fat can point out if I'm wrong. Now there are sales, transactions of small house rights, so that people from outside can move in? Are you talking about the property rights that you are talking about? Is that in excess of the rights that we are trying to protect? And also a lot of this is agricultural land, very little is residential land. So under Country Park, the status quo will be preserved, and if there are small house applications, there would be stricter vetting with AFCD as an additional gatekeeper, whereas this is not available under the other approach. Any response, Mr.? If not, Mr. Albert Chen. Now, for village planning and land use under Country Park, these are quite distinct. Now, once it's in a country park, you cannot even ride a bike unless it's a cycling trail. Now, if you ride a bike without approval, you are infringing the law. Now, the country park applies rules across the board, whereas under the OZP, you can have flexible handling on a case-by-case basis under columns 1 and 2 arrangement. Now, of course, there is a background for enclaves. That is, they can develop as villages. And in the past, the government draws up village environments and then regulates the land use within the villages. Now is this a V zone? This is the recognized village. This is different from V zone. The blue line is recognized village boundary. You haven't done the village OZP. It won't be done if we do if we take the country park approach. Now, the government was going to do it by step by step for whole of Hong Kong. Now, not for here. Now, I understand the Kenneth Chan examples. Some get-rich-quick people want to find some loopholes and make some kind of development within village environments. Now, we understand that background, but your present approach, is it in conflict with the original intentions looking at the historical background? Now, maybe you can give us the meeting minutes back then. Now, what's the background for these recognized village boundaries? Please, Mr. Lau Wong-Fa, don't force us to vote today. Now, we have to check the two charts. The CPSKEA and the CPSKEB, what are the differences? We have to look at them. Well, when we come to discussing the motions, then you can express your views on that. James Tan. Now, it's very simple. It's all about money. I want to sort out one thing. Within the dotted blue lines, the pink areas is residential land, white is government land, and yellow is agricultural lot. They can apply to build houses, but the controversial part is the yellow area. If you pass the amendment, then they cannot use the agricultural land as they wish. You used to say that they can use the yellow area for building small houses, even though it's not for large developments. Now Mr. Lau Wong Fat is saying that the yellow land can have great profit potential. Now, are you trying to take that yellow land and change the approach so that it makes a big difference for them financially? They cannot use the land except for their own residence. So you are preventing them from getting rich in the future. Concerning the yellow land, right now it's private agricultural land. Even right now it cannot be developed. Now once it becomes part of country park, then they have to apply, so large-scale developments may not be approved. So it makes no big distinction. In now right now one can pay premium for other locations. Now they can't do that right now. No, they can't. You can only do that for village houses. That is within the village boundaries, within the blue lines. The yellow area can be only used for agriculture or structures without covers. So it's not possible right now, and it's not possible in the future. That's right. So it doesn't make any difference financially. So agricultural land is only for agriculture. They can't pay premium and use it for other non-agricultural use. It's not allowed under the lease. And that applies even to yellow area outside the blue lines. That's right. But they can dig it all up and put a fence around it and not let people through. That's what happened when people found that there was large-scale destruction of the vegetation cover back then. Now, it's, as I remember, it was agricultural land. They were trying to do something. No construction of housing yet. Mr. Low Wai Kwok, Mr. Au talked about the meetings and consultations with villagers and district councils, and they objected. Now, in the course of discussion regarding OZP, were they more amenable to the OZP approach? Now, many deputations asked why the OZP approach was not adopted. Yes, we did. When we consulted, the Sai Kung District Council did ask us to consider using the OZP approach, but other stakeholders do not support that. The green groups, the hiking bodies. I'm talking about the local people, the rural committees. They all feel that the OZP approach is more workable. Yes, that was their view. So we come to debating the document tabled by Mr. Lau Wong Fat. First, I'd like to ask Mr. Lau Wong Fat to confirm this is an amendment to amend the sub-legislation, or are you proposing a motion for people to show their approach or preference? Now, if we are to amend a text, then the President will have to do that in Council.
I'd like to tell members first that I myself support the inclusion. So I, as the chairman, can make the move to move the motion, but I will vote against it. So at this stage, if I make my stance clear, you will be able to make a choice as to whether you want to move it in your capacity as a member or you ask the subcommittee chairman to do it. But if this is just to register your stance, Chairman, I think we can view it as a view or a comment, and later on we do clause by clause, then we can approach the amendments. No, I'm asking you here because the text itself is too simple. In fact, we don't exactly need to scrutinize it. So I'd like to ask Mr. Lau Wong Fat's intention clearly. Are you only registering your stance that you would like the subcommittee to adopt your comment, or are you already in the stage of moving an amendment? If that's the case, I will have to let you know my stance first, so Mr. Lau can make a choice.
根本係影響到個條例，
因為最好啦嘛，
影響到另外
修訂
根本就係
啦，我哋經過。
I think I have discussed with some members, and this is an amendment. Okay, we will have further meetings. And now we have not gone into the clause-by-clause examination stage. But are you satisfied that all questions, general questions, have been asked? If you have asked all general questions, we still have 12 more minutes. In fact, we can go right into clause by clause now, and Mr. Lau can move the amendments. Chairman, I asked many questions, and I was asking for written answers. I was asking for minutes and background information. I think we need to look at that information before we should go into clause by clause. Mr. Gary Chan, I'd like to ask a procedural point, and I'd like the clerk to comment. Even if we have certain information papers that we are waiting for, we can still go into clause by clause and allow Mr. Wong to move the amendment. There will be another debate at the Council. All members will still have the chance to discuss the order together. It is not that once the amendment is made, we have no other opportunities to discuss the order. Well, you're correct. But a member is saying that this should be registered only as a comment and not an amendment. No, he is saying that this is an amendment, a motion to amend the order. But it doesn't mean that we have already gone into clause-by-clause examination, because I was asking for information, I was asking for background, because in previous bills committees, we would tackle all matters of principle before we go into clause by clause. We should not just make way for one motion and distort the established procedures. Exactly. That is why I was asking members whether you have asked all your general questions. I am of the view that a subcommittee should respect the rights of members, even if they belong to the minority, in asking questions and for information. If a member is of the view that he has not got all the answers he wanted, we should respect him. We have a lot of time because we only have to report to the House on the 22nd. Chairman, I think I understand the matter thoroughly. I don't need any other thing to help me make a decision. I think you should ask the members here whether they need another meeting. I know why the member is asking those questions, but to me, that is not an important question. Okay, members, I hope the Council will not just adopt the majority view, so the minority will be deprived the chance to seek information. I don't think this is how the Council should proceed. Chairman, a question. You said at the beginning that at 10:30 you would process the motion. That is why you limited our speaking time, and you also drew a line as to how many members could speak. That has been well done. You have done very well. I hope you will now consider the motion according to what you said. Okay, I will answer Ms. Quat first. I am processing the motion. I was asking whether members were asking questions, and it was just for this meeting. I was not saying whether members have asked all the questions on the order. We are now processing the order and the motion. Now, of course, in the course of processing the motion. Members can speak against the processing of the motion. Mr. Raymond Chan and Mr. Christopher Chong raised hands to speak for the first time. We have also Mr. Kenneth Chan. We can extend the meeting by 15 minutes until 11. Please don't. We have another meeting on Tuesday, and it has been scheduled. So I don't think we need to rush through the entire scrutiny period. Mr. Raymond Chan. Chairman, I don't think we need to attend to this urgently. Just now, Ms. Elizabeth Quat said that the chairman already said at 10:30 we should process the motion. I think this is also the time for us to clarify how the motion should be processed. And Chairman, you did not say that at 10:30 we should start clause by clause examination. Is that right? No, I didn't say that. That is why at the beginning I said we would process the motion. Therefore, Chairman, I don't think you have gone back on your words. Exactly. I started to clarify with Mr. Lau Wong-Fat whether this was just to register his stance or whether he was already trying to amend the order. Mr. Christopher Chung? I don't agree. You said that at 10:30 you would process the motion, so you implied that that would be an amendment. Mr. Lau Wong-Fat already said that it's an amendment motion and you should do the amendment at 10:30. As for Mr. Albert Chan, he already said that the information could be supplied after the meeting, but now he is asking for the information before he would do any other thing. But that should not affect his stance. This is only a motion at the subcommittee. Members will still be able to speak at the council, and he can decide otherwise. Chairman, are you listening to me? Yes, I have 2 years. But you are speaking to her. I can hear you. I can hear you. That is why the meeting is progressing so slowly. Have you said everything you wanted to say? Sorry, I don't accept that comment. Very often, the chairman... Well, you were talking to the legal advisor while I spoke. Well, actually, we should end the meeting at 10:45 for the sake of efficiency. Mr. Chung is off mic. That is your subjective view. You were impolite because I was talking and you turned your head. I wouldn't process that. You are entitled to your view. Mr. Kenneth Chan? Thank you, Chairman. At 10:30, as Ms. Quat said, we should process the motion. I agree, we should process the motion. But then there could still be room for discussion, and I think you are processing it. I think some members were anxious to have the motion processed. I thought that Mr. Lau was just registering his stance, and that would be allowable. But if this is a procedural point, or if it has a legal binding effect, and if the SC chairman would be entrusted to move the motion, in other words, to repeal the order, then I think we should clarify that point. So procedurally, I need to ask 2 questions, and I hope you will hear me out. First, in 2010, last time when Ms. Tanya Chan handled a similar discussion, the amendment was to repeal one thing, and that is the extension of country parks. But now there are 3 things under the order, and you are just singling out one of those 3 matters. I'd like to clarify whether this has happened before, because last time it was just about one matter, and now it is one among the 3. Would that have an impact on the amendment process? Is there anything we don't know, and should we not clarify the impact first, because we don't want to be arbitrary, because we would be questioned as to whether we have clarified our stance. Is all right if you want to register a stance, but if this is a legal issue, I think we should think more about it. Number 2, if the text is about a legal amendment, I think we should be more meticulous. I think you should abide by a certain format so that it is in line with procedural justice? Your second question is easier if you want me to answer you. Yes, indeed, there is a strict format for legal documents if indeed this is an amendment. We have got this paper circulated at the meeting, but its format may not follow the legal amendments format that we usually see. But if you look at the wording itself, it is quite simple. That is why I was trying to confirm with Mr. Lau Wong-Fat whether this was just to express his stance or whether this is a legal amendment. If it is an amendment to the law, it must be in a certain format. Can I ask the legal advisor to say something? Thank you, Chairman. The procedure for scrutinizing a piece of subsidiary legislation can be decided by the subcommittee, but I would let you know the general process. The Chairman asked this question, and that is whether this motion is just to express a member's stance or whether it is an amendment. If it is just to express a member's stance, after it is carried, it has no binding effect. It is just an expression of view. But Mr. Lau said no. He would like to move a formal amendment. And I'll let you know the general procedure for moving amendments. Usually, we would do clause-by-clause examination first, and members or the administration, if the administration wants to move amendments, the subcommittee will study the amendment and its text. This is the general procedure, but of course the subcommittee can decide otherwise, subject to members' agreement. Okay, at this stage, we need to ask Mr. Lau Wong-Fat, would you like to move a motion to express your stance today, or are you moving an amendment motion? If you want to amend the law, then perhaps this document has not complied with the standard format required by this council, and you can move it later. Well, I have written the word to repeal in the motion. Okay, you are indicating a direction, is that right? Yes. Okay, Mr. Lau has now confirmed clearly the nature of the motion, that it is just an expression of a stance or a direction. So now, have you spoken on the motion? Mr. Albert Chan, I have not been able to compare the plans. I don't have the information. It's very difficult for me to express my view on the motion. I just like to minute this. Okay. Now I will put this to the vote. Those in agreement? In agreement with what? Those who support the motion moved by Mr. Lau Wong-Fat, hands up. Would you like to record the names? Chen Han Pan, Gary Chan, Lo Wai Kwok, Lau Wong-Fat, James Tian, Christopher Chong. Those in objection? Albert Chan, Kenneth Chan, Raymond Chan, and Wu Chi-Wai. The motion is carried 7-4. There is nothing under AOB, and the meeting is adjourned. The meeting would resume at 9 o'clock next Tuesday. Thank you. Can we ask Mr. Lau Wong-Fat for the two plans? Okay, it will be supplied by the government. Let me have the plans for comparison, because I want to know the difference. Okay, Mr. Au, can you supply the maps to us? The map, yes, these two mentioned in the motion. CPSK bracket EB, the old one. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
你唔好講，係咯。